By the side of the sea, it was almost as if his life had passed and he had forgotten to notice that the years had gone. Now he was here by the side of the quaint seaside, a place that he knew as a child. But now he'd come back to see this place. He was a good man, tall, good, strong. And you could tell that there was a faded glory to the seaside that he remembered as a child. He was eating an ice cream. It was starting to melt in his hand. But this was not the height of summer. It was a blustery Christmas Day morning. He loved this place. He loved the memory of this place. As he ate and watched the ice cream starting to drip down his hand, he could hear his feet crunching on the pebble-filled beach. He wasn't the only one who was on the beach. You could see that there was someone else who was wishing for treasure with a metal detector. And he smiled to himself to think that perhaps they had got it upon this very Christmas morning. It made a sound like a robot, a high-pitched squeak. But he looked. He could see shells that were filled with mother of pearl. And he wondered if there was any treasure buried underneath these pebbles. The incessant whir and click, like some kind of robotic alien. You could see that this someone else had found something on the beach. But they obviously didn't like it. They threw it over their shoulders. He was very curious. His hands were sticky. And he thought that he would go down to the side of the sea and wash his hands. But he couldn't believe just how cold it was. And he looked and saw that it was some kind of treasure. It looked like a shell filled with mother of pearl, and he rubbed it on the side of his sleeve, and you could see that it started to shine. It started to look brighter. You could almost see his own face in it. And it was then that he looked, not at his own face, but at the reflection of something over his shoulder. It looked just like a woman, a beautiful woman, a woman who was swimming in the water. But when he put his own hands into the water, it was so cold, and when he'd been a boy, he'd always wished that he could see mermaids in the water. And now, so many years later, it was almost as if his wish had come true when he was a man. He looked and he could see, and she looked at him and he looked at her. And this treasure that had been cast to one side, but he had taken, was a mermaid's mirror. He wasn't too old to believe in these things. He wasn't too old to want to believe in these things. She came closer. The two of them. She sat as the waves crashed about her. He stood, making sure that the water that was so cold didn't soak him. And the two of them sat there and chatted and spoke until he realised that he was cold. He was very cold. But he promised that he would come back, and they would have a picnic down by the side of the sea with sponge cake and cheese. And he would read her stories of what it was to live upon the land and walk upon two legs. And every year at Christmas time, when there would be virtually no one else, perhaps someone with a metal detector, by the edge of the sea, he would sit there and wait until the sea and the shore and the pebbles were his and his alone, and call to a mermaid, and the two of them would sit by the side of the sea, and his voice would rise high in the air, and they would sit and eat and picnic upon cheese and cake by the side of the salty sea.